That is the question of whether or not the Cardinals, if they take Kyler Murray with the first overall pick in the draft, should keep quarterback Josh Rosen. It is occurring to me that maybe there is wisdom in the Cardinals keeping both quarterbacks. We broaden that into a discussion of whether or not it makes sense for teams to have two starting quarterbacks or two starting caliber quarterbacks. You're a big believer in that more traditional approach of a clear-cut starter, a clear-cut backup, and no competition of any kind, no sense of competition, no controversy, nothing between number one and number two.
Yeah, well, I do. I think it sets up a problem within a football team. I mean, 99 out of 100 times, the starting quarterback is the leader of the offense at the very least. And a lot of times, certainly in the conversation for the number one leader on a team or the number one or number two leader of a football team. And when you want to have a good backup quarterback, and we saw that with the Philadelphia Eagles. I understand that, but that's a different scenario than what we have right now in this. This would be two top 10 picks who are on the same roster and are both kind of alpha leader type guys in their own right. And I just think, yes, it's setting up for a disaster that way, to where you can divide the locker room, you can divide the fan base, and just cause more issues than what it's worth at the end of the day by having two guys that are starting quarterbacks both on the same roster there trying to duel it out and win over guys in the locker room on a daily basis.
But, you've said as it relates to Antonio Brown that you would have preferred that the Steelers play hardball with him and say, look, this is the way it works. We have a contract. We have you under contract for 3 more years. You play for us or you play for no one. If you're the Cardinals, you can go to Josh Rosen and say, here's how it's going to be. You have received more than $11 million for 1 year. You've got $6.2 million coming to you fully guaranteed. We expect you to show up and do whatever job is asked of you. And if you're not the starting quarterback, then you're not the starting quarterback. You're the backup quarterback, and we expect you to behave accordingly, and we expect you to do everything that you are asked to do within the confines of what the CBA requires and applicable team rules. And I don't know what's wrong with that if Kyler Murray is clearly the best guy. Now, maybe Josh Rosen ends up being better. Maybe he's the better guy. And Kyler Murray just doesn't develop. And I think keeping Rosen is a hedge against Murray being a bust. Then you get the best of both worlds, Chris, because I've been saying it's better to roll the dice on Murray and have him not work out than not take him and have him become a superstar somewhere else. So in that same vein, if you're willing to take the risk that he's going to be a bust, you keep Rosen around as that insurance against it happening so he can be your quarterback if Murray just isn't the guy.
Yeah, that's logical in a lot of ways. Yes, you're right. Okay, in that way. But when you're the number one pick in the draft, you got to go all in on making number one work. And, I think there you're just asking, you're not going all in there. And you're not going to give the guy who is the number one pick necessarily the confidence that, he's definitely the guy. You're going to send mixed signals, I think, to the rest of your football team, too, to go, oh, we picked him number one, but we got this guy just in case because we're not sure. Whatever it may be, I think those are, viable, issues there with that conversation. And again, with Josh Rosen, I just don't think there's two scenarios, and you laid out a few of them on the show, and I think one you hit on right. If they keep Josh Rosen, on the roster, and somebody loses a quarterback in training camp or preseason, his trade value will probably be at its highest point right there if they do that. So maybe that's the thinking of that. But if they keep Josh Rosen and he never gets no injuries happen, and he never gets to get on the field this year or do anything, and Kyler Murray is the starting quarterback, man, his trade value will be very low next offseason. Right now is the safest play to do it. You might not get everything you want if you trade, or the Cardinals might not get everything they want if they trade for Josh Rosen, because everybody in the NFL believes they're taking Kyler Murray for one, so that lessens the trade value. But regardless, I just think you're playing with fire. There's just too many instances of two quarterbacks where it doesn't work out. It's just not the right way. I saw my father go through it. It was a stress on the New York Giants in the 91-92 team seasons. We saw RG3 and Kirk Cousins, a few years back. That led to some issues with the team and the coaching staff and things like that. So I just think you're playing with fire when you have two guys like that who think they're franchise quarterbacks, were drafted as franchise quarterbacks, and they're on the same roster.
Yeah, but, I still think there's a way to work your way through this. I mean, we talk all the time about toughness of quarterbacks, and if they can't handle situations like that, how can you expect them to handle adversity on the field? And I think there's an opportunity to go to Josh Rosen and say, look, Josh, we still really like you, and we think that maybe something could happen here where you are part of this team. And even if you're not, you're a young guy. Quarterbacks are playing deep into their 30s. You're going to have a long career. Look at what Jimmy Garoppolo had to do in New England. He was on the bench, and he eventually got a chance to play, and he played well enough that the 49ers wanted to trade for him, and he's making huge money there. And that's not all that long down the road. So for now, we're exercising our prerogative to keep you here. We want you here. And we want to try to make this work, and we want you to grow and learn in this offense, and you'll be better off for that experience when you are a starting quarterback somewhere else. And then they can trade him after they have that conversation, but at least to hold it together. So if they aren't I just look at it this way, and I don't know what you've said that he's worth a first-round pick. So what would be your floor if you're the Cardinals? What is the minimum you take in order to avoid this situation that you think would be such a potential problem of having both guys on the team?
Yeah, I mean, again, I would not trade away anything like in the top 15 of the draft. Like, I look at the Washington Redskins and go, okay, if they really thought, like, this is the guy, okay?
Right. I'm asking you from the Cardinals' perspective, what is the least you would take to do the trade?
Maybe
short of saying, we'll just keep him.
Maybe a second rounder with some added picks added into it, right? Something along those lines, whether it's a 2 and a 4 or a 2 and a 3 or a 2 and a 2. I guess something along those lines. I'd have to think about it a little bit more and just hash it out to give you the exact, but I think that's just off the top of my head would kind of be the floor for that kind of trade right off the bat. Hey, this is the other thing too, and let's move on after this because I have nothing else to say. Maybe you will. But this is one other thing I would worry about. Josh Rosen, we know he's a little outspoken, right? You have him on the roster. He's not afraid to speak his mind. We know that, and I really like that about him. But, this is the kind of scenario that could be a detriment. Josh Rosen, let's say he's outperforming Kyler Murray, but Kyler Murray's the #1 pick in training camp, and they're going to give him, 9 lives to fail and do things like that. Josh Rosen now starts to feel like, well, what the hell's going on here? Why aren't I starting preseason game number 3? For the last 4 weeks in training camp, I've dominated this guy. Now he starts mouthing off about he's being disrespected in the locker room, or start telling guys, look, this is like the 10th day in a row I've outperformed him in practice. They're not giving me a fair shake. That's how issues start in a locker room, and that's what I would be worried about.
Yeah, but again, if they don't get what you think they should get, you're saying they should keep him, right? I mean, if there's a floor that you don't reach with an offer for Josh Rosen, then the Cardinals need to keep him and maybe wait for the offers to improve by circumstance or whatever over the next year or so.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.